Hello and welcome to episode 188 of the Mark and Me podcast. As always, I'm your host Mark. Now on today's episode, I'm joined by a guest that I've wanted on this podcast for over 5 years. It's a band I've followed since my teenage years. I was obsessed with the first album Swim and then the incredible Polythene, and I've been a fan of this band ever since. They're one of the best live bands that I've seen out there, and I truly believe that it's one of the best songwriters of our generation. I'm thrilled to announce that on today's episode, I'm joined by Grant Nicholas of the absolute awesome band Feeder. The interview will be coming up in just a couple of minutes' time. We get to talk all about the band's history, songwriting, their brand new album that's coming out soon, Torpedo, life on the road, touring, headlining Download, and so much more. But let's touch base and talk about my last episode. On episode 187, I was joined by Dan from the amazing band Alkaline Trio. Thank you to everyone that took the time to listen. I had a great response and it was so good to see everyone checking out his brand new solo album. But let's get back to today's episode. For me, this is one of my biggest interviews that I've done. Grant Nicholas from the amazing Feeder. So I think the best thing to do is to get straight to it. So here's me and Grant talking all things music. So Grant, thanks for taking the time to join me today on the Mark and Me podcast.
That's okay.
What I want to do today is take it right back to the early days, and I want to know those early albums that you were buying that you remember falling in love with and kind of making you probably want to pick up a guitar and think, I want to be in a band.
There's quite a few. I mean, I remember obviously being very young and being in my dad's car and sort of listening to anything from ABBA to sort of Carpenters, so, typical, pop music and the easy listening 70s, bands like Bread, that super kind of mellow 70s kind of acoustic stuff, nothing particularly cool. I mean, my parents did like the Beatles. I wouldn't say that they were huge, kind of music experts. I'd say my mum was very into music. She was more into musicals and stuff like that. She used to sing. So she used to do a lot of acting and singing, stuff like Sound of Music and all that kind of stuff.
Proper musicals.
So that's where any small trace of musical talent I have, I think definitely comes from my mum's side of the family. My dad's not, he loves music, but he's not at all musical. He doesn't play anything or anything like that. But yeah, so basically anything from sort of going to see my mum play, obviously sing and perform in his musical, and just what my dad was playing in his car. And then I'm talking of like very young now. I mean, I'm sort of, super young. And then maybe when I sort of got to 8 or 9, I started to really get into music properly. My older brother obviously was buying records and cassettes.
Yeah.
And it was honestly a real mixture. I've had a real kind of, mix of what he introduced me to, what my mates were listening to. I grew up just outside Chepstow, which is a pretty small place. There's not a huge amount going on. So music was a real escape and it was just something to do. So it was anything from Fleetwood Mac, Black Sabbath, Led Zeppelin, Pink Floyd, Tom Petty. I got into Neil Young. It was, and also, bands like early U2, early Simple Minds, Gary Newman. It was a real sort of, mixture, and also actually quite a lot of punk rock, Sex Pistols. I was really into the Police. Like Police have been a big influence on me. Just kind of one of those bands. David Bowie, lots of kind of usual stuff really, but it was a real mix. I didn't really sort of, I think when I was at school, there was tend to be more, the music was a bit more separated. You were either like into goth or you were like an indie kid or like a rock thing, whereas I was just into lots of stuff. And I think music's become a bit more like that now, actually. I think kids don't tend to sort of, if it's a good song, they like it, they go with it,
That's definitely the case. And can you remember those first shows you went to? Maybe your brother took you, but those early gigs where you were like, oh my God.
Well, my first sort of experience of seeing a live band was the sixth form band at school that were called No Parking, I think. Just great name. And they were just doing sort of covers bands, and that's what I used to do in my school band. But the first gig I think I remember going to was not with my brother, actually. We used to have this really cool maths teacher at school he was, very conservative looking. And he was a great guy. He was called Mr. Gregory, I think his name was. He didn't actually teach me maths, but I think he taught my brother. But he's really into rock, like heavy rock and all sorts of stuff.
That's awesome.
somehow he used to organise to take kids to go and see gigs. And we used to go to the Colston Hall mainly in Bristol, which is obviously now changing name for various reasons. But it's just a really great venue, and it was. I think the first band I saw was, I think it was either Ozzy Osbourne or Black Sabbath. I think it was Ozzy Osbourne actually, and then followed closely by, I think, Def Leppard.
Bloody hell!
lots of 80s, lots of sort of 80s sort of metal bands. Judas Priest, all those kind of bands.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, it was just kind of what we went to see, and it totally blew me away. Just there was some. I mean, I remember seeing when I saw Ozzy. It must have been Ozzy because there was a guitar player who was very legendary, and still is actually. He died very young in a plane crash. His name was Randy Rhoads, and he was an amazing guitar player. He was sort of, for me, he was up there with sort of Eddie Van Halen and stuff like that. He was definitely, would have been, I think, a legendary guitar player. But sadly, he was killed actually very young in a plane crash. Not only a few weeks after I saw them, I think. So yeah, so those were a few bands that I definitely remember going to see. And yeah, it was just sort of hearing a drum kit through a PA, just the power of it. I remember there was no barriers there in those days, so you could literally go right up to the front of the stage and have a chin on the front. So you had a great view, and it was just it just totally blew me away. I think that was when I decided I definitely wanted to be in a band.
I love that thought of you just being there with a teacher, seeing stuff like "Paranoid" by Black Sabbath being played in front of you.
It was
fucking unbelievable.
Well, he used to let us just get on. We used to often sort of go and buy our t-shirt, which was often a bootleg outside. I shouldn't say that really. And like rush to the front and literally these just be headbanging for the whole time. And then the next day, you sort of sore neck. But it was a great experience, and it really introduced me to music at quite a young age. Yeah,
that's awesome. Mine wasn't as cool. Mine was Cooler Shaker at the Aston Villa Leisure
that's all right.
Centre.
No, Cooler Shaker are a good band.
They
are
a
good band.
It's just not as cool as saying Black Sabbath with my teacher.
Well, I don't know. There was a time when I said that, and for some people that maybe isn't cool, but they were sort of, they were bands that got me Aussie, and just like Sabbath, and just been sort of legendary, major careers. You can't really mock that. But I'm sure there was a few others as well. But those are definitely a few that I remember. I mean, Def Leppard, you have to remember, they became a very big American, huge band. But it was when they were just on the sort of start to get really big, and I think they went to America and they went huge. I mean, they were a massive band. So, and I think it was, what was the tour? It might have been the High and Dry tour or something like that. I can't remember. But you can't mock a band. I'm not necessarily into all stuff now, but you can't knock a band that's had that kind of career, that had that kind of impact in America. I mean, they sold millions and millions of records, and it was a time for that kind of music. It's all about big hair and big choruses and stuff like that.
Definitely. And I suppose when you've been talking about that collective mix of bands that you love, the heavy, but then you've also got the mellow. I think that must have been in your blood, because when you've been writing songs with Feeder, when I bought Polyphene and Swim and all your early albums, the fact that I could listen to these real heavy tracks that were really, distorted guitars, like a British kind of Smashing Pumpkins kind of rock sound of Billy Corgan's guitar tones. But then you had songs on an acoustic like High on the same album, but it was still the unique sound of Feeder. That must be something that's stuck with you, because even with Yesterday Went Too Soon and all this, all your stuff has a nice mix of, a bit like Biffy Clyro. You got the heavy, the rock band as a three piece, but you can also pull out an anthem where it gets the whole crowd singing a chorus on an acoustic. You've got that power. So that must be from your roots of growing up, of these amazing bands you listen to.
I think so, because I think a lot of the bands I grew up listening to were real song-based bands, and I even like Eagles and stuff like that, bands with harmonies. I mean, Tom Petty's a massive influence on me, even more so as I got older. Just sort of love his style of songwriting, and I really connect with his chords and the way I kind of write. But yeah, I mean, we got compared to Pumpkins and stuff like that. I was, we were really into Sabbath, and a lot of those tones and guitar sounds. I mean, I remember there was a kid at school that always used to have like really cool like guitar pedals, and I had some little crappy distortion one that sounded absolutely rubbish, but at least it was like distortion. I was like, oh, that's how you get that sound. And he had a big muff pedal, which I've gone on to use. I used it a lot on Polyphene, and I use a Tone Benders and big muffs. And that was very much that kind of pumpkin sound, like very saturated. But it did really come from the 70s, a lot of that sound, that kind of saturation. And it was actually a bit of an accident. I really fell upon that sound. It was just from using a few cool pedals. And for me, the guitar sound was really important in Feeder. It was more about the sort of sound and the actual being, like the best lead guitar player. And I didn't really care about that. I was more into songs and tone and sounds and just getting big, just trying to make a big sound out of three people, and a combination of like Taka's bass playing and my guitar tone, and obviously John, it just kind of came together. It worked. But yeah, I mean, it was sort of, to answer your question, I think it's definitely down to, I'm a real song guy. I love melodies, and I think that's always been there. And that's a massive part of what Feeder are. And, even going back to that first album, Swim Polythene, even, Two Colours, when we were signed and everything, I was always writing songs on acoustic and stuff. And having that, I always, we always had that as a band. I always had that as a writer. And I think that Echo, who were our label that signed us, they signed us actually on the back of a lot of our acoustic stuff, because they saw this band, they're kind of grungy heavy, but they could evolve into something and be a bit more than that. And maybe be, you mentioned Pumpkins, but to me, what I loved about bands like the Pumpkins, I didn't mind in comparison, is they had songs with strings on, they had acoustic songs, they had big riff songs, anthemic songs. And, kind of Led Zeppelin had that, and to me, that's what I loved about Zeppelin. They can have a folk song, and then they can have Kashmir, it's just brilliant. And I just loved it. Yeah, but they had that freedom as a band. So to me, it feels completely normal. It doesn't feel, I don't even think about it. It's just kind of in my blood. It's in my DNA. I can't, it's just the way I write. And that's what kind of set that sort of idea for the whole Feeder thing, really, when we started like many years ago, 92, before I met Taka. We liked the three-piece thing. I know John was like massively into the Police as well. He's a big Stuart Copeland fan. And we just liked the fact that three people could make a real racket, and you had to work a bit harder. And it was also really portable. So it was a bit cheaper to tour a three-piece.
You can all fit in one car as well, which is always good.
You could all get, it was really handy, yeah. It was just less people, and it was a real challenge. Obviously as you evolve, you can't do all those parts live, and you think, well, I can't do those string parts, those full guitar parts I put on. But because the songs started off, working just it might have been the riff or the chords, they still kind of worked in a more simplistic way. You mentioned Biffy Clyro. It's a similar thing with them, really, because they've evolved. They have songs now, they're really grand. But, Biffy, they opened for us going back many years ago, probably around their second, third album time. And they were, they definitely had something, and they just made a real racket. We're different musically in some way, but there's some similarities. And, they reminded me a little bit of us when we started, and they've obviously evolved as we've evolved as a band, but I still see them as being, they're still a three-piece at heart there. And I think that deep down, I still feel that way. And I know, not taking any of the credit away from our live musicians, because they're absolutely amazing.
Of course.
Dean DeVal and Tommy Gleason, they bring a lot to it. But for me, that chemistry is, will always be that Feeder thing, that sort of three-piece.
I think as well, you mentioned in bands like Police, and I'm sure bands like Rush, you go and see them on, there's three people, and you can't believe that they're putting in such a shift, because it's so much hard work to try and fill an arena with these three people, and they do it endlessly. It's brilliant.
I know. I mean, obviously they were a big influence on me as well. I mean, Permanent Waves is, I still play it all the time now. It's, they're a great band. And I actually went for dinner once with Alex. He took me, my friend is very good mates with him, and he was over in London. He took me out to some really fancy dinner. We ended up in his hotel room till about 6 a.m, a little bit worse for wear. It was quite incredible. But it was so nice to hang out with like a member of Rush. So it was that three-piece thing. I mean, I remember seeing some footage of Rush, and I know that Geddy used to have the bass pedals, and they used to have a lot of stuff going on to try and do all that. Pretty clever. I remember Taka had bass pedals in the early days of Feeder, actually. So he used to trigger it with his foot. And that must have been, God knows how he did that. He had to make sure he didn't have too many beers before he went off stage, so that he'd be hitting the wrong he'd be hitting the wrong pedal. But it was, we did it for, we still go back to three-piece sometimes. We haven't done it for a while, but sometimes we rehearse when we got a new record. Sometimes we sort of just to sort of do it like gradually. Sometimes we'll rehearse just as three, and then maybe sort of like bring in Tommy and CC after, just so we can get the basics right and then go from there. But I mean, this really depends, really. I mean, things have changed a lot, obviously, with all the technology and things like that. And you know, we don't. It's hard. You know, the thing I miss about the early days of being in a band is you could just go to some little dodgy room with some awful PA. This didn't matter, and you just plug your amp and you just go and just play for hours. Whereas, you know, when you get bigger as a band, there's much more to it. You know, you've got to get all the gear out the lockup. You got to get your. It's a bit more of a palaver. I do. You know, sometimes I wish I just had this little room, you know, and I'm still looking for one actually. We could just go in there, just have a couple of little amps, you know, some little basic drum kit, and just go in there
and raw,
just keep it raw. But I think every band, as they become more successful, I think they really sort of like crave and miss that sometimes, you know, unless you're very lucky, you've got your own big complex, you know. It's hard to do that. So when we're in rehearsal, we have to really make the most of our time there, because it's quite a faff getting it all set up.
One of the things that I loved about the early Feeder albums and seeing you guys live, and it must be 20 years ago now, which blows my mind, is the fact that when I listened to Polyphene and then I'd go and see you at a venue at that size, would be something like Wolverhampton, Wolfram Hall, those sort of venues. You sounded like the same band as the CD, which was important. You know, you go and see some bands that are so overproduced, and you go and then see them live, and it's a letdown because you're like, okay, it hasn't got the 17 layers of guitars, it hasn't got all these harmonies and string sections. But I think that's kind of responsible for the way that you portrayed yourself on CD. But you had Chris Sheldon at the Realm, and for me, he's one of the most incredible producers out there. The stuff he's done with Foo Fighters and bands like Reuben are just flawless. So it must have been an absolute honor to work with someone so good and such an incredible human being.
Yeah. I mean, he was great. I mean, Chris obviously mixed the Foo Fighters. It was produced by Gil Norton.
Yeah.
But I mean, obviously Gil Norton I've done more production with than Chris. But I still work with Chris on a regular basis. You know, he's a great mixer. He's a great producer as well. But we tend to work more. He tends to do more mixing stuff in Feeder nowadays, which is what he tends to do in general now more, because
of course
Chris is very lucky, because he was kind of an engineer that got into like production and was always really good at mixing. And I think it's been really great for him, because a lot of big producers, you know, those big paychecks aren't quite as good as they used to be back in the day. But, you know, back in the 90s, I think even what we spent, and we were on tight budgets, it was a lot of money. And I think, and some of the bands that we were, you know, our contemporaries at the time were, oh my God, I mean, their album budgets were just ridiculous. And I'm thinking, God, how are the labels ever going to get that back? Unless they're extremely successful. But Chris is brilliant. And he feels like he's almost part of the band, really, Chris, because you know, we have a real laugh together and we wind each other up, but he's a great guy. And I know him, you know, I've known Chris even before Feeder, actually. And he's always somebody that I enjoy working with. I push him really hard because I know Chris can just like mix like that and do his thing. Yeah. But if I push him that bit harder, you just get that little bit of magic sometimes out of him, because he knows what I'm like. And I think you know, mixing's it's a bit like songwriting. It can be quite a lonely thing sometimes, because you're thinking, is it any good? Or sometimes you need a little bit of like, you know, you need some input, you know, in some way. And I think that, you know, mixing must be very lonely sat there, because you're probably thinking, I think it sounds good. So sometimes having a little bit of input, it's not insulting, I don't think. I think it's sometimes you need that. And I think sometimes Chris will send me a mix. I go, sounds amazing. What do we do? It's like, well, I don't know, maybe just turn down that backing vocal a tiny bit and it's done. And then some take a bit more time, you know. I mean, there's no rules.
No.
But yeah, I mean, Chris is brilliant, and we've worked together for a long, long time. I've worked with some great producers and mixers over the years, but yeah, you just find somebody that he understands our chemistry. He understands what's in my head, I think, more than a lot of people. And as you know, to answer your question, I mean, I'm quite honoured here to say that when he came to see Feeder shows in the early days, it wasn't too dissimilar to the record, but there was actually quite a lot of guitars on those records and parts. But somehow, I think that because the songs were written with the main guitar part, as long as that was there,
yeah,
and the drums and Taka's parts were there, I think we kind of got away with it, you know.
I think
in the
as
same
well
way
when
as maybe
you
Biffy did,
yeah, like Biffy's a great example, especially like Vertigo, Bliss, those early albums on Black
Yeah.
and Sky. But I think you just pulled it off. Maybe it was the pedals, maybe it was the rigs you were using, the amps and stuff. But when I went to see your shows, there was not any lack of sound. There wasn't, oh, hang on, that bit's not there. It just came across like the CD I'd listened to, or probably cassette, on the way to the gig, you know.
Yeah, I messed with tunings a lot as well. I was used to do a lot of lower tunings to fill out the sound, and pedals, and just my amp setup. I mean, I don't have a typical big, huge like kind of rock setup. I always used to use combos in general, and people were quite surprised by that. I remember even when I worked with Chris, he was like, "Oh, I expect you to have like 8 Marshalls," but I just have these 2 little combos, like a Vox 8030. I was using a Fender Twin then, which I often still use, but I tend to use Fender DeVille's now. For
Fender
anyone who's
DeVille's
into
are the
guitars,
most beautiful sounding guitar for a clean
they're
tone.
just
Fucking
they're great.
incredible.
They're really good. I find them a bit more versatile than the Twin, because some Twins sound fantastic. I had a great blackface Twin that got burnt in a bus fire on tour, and I've never replaced it. But I've still got my original 70s Twin, which I used on Polythene, which is a bit of a, I shouldn't be rude about it. It's a bit of a dog, but it's got a character to it, and it's a proper old school 70s one. Chris used to make me. We used to plug it into a. I used to have a really old school, if I still got it, greenback Marshall 4x12, like the old Hendrix style ones.
I know the
We used
ones,
to
yeah.
basically, yeah. So we used to take. We used to not even use the speakers in the Twin, because we used to go into that, and that was something we tried. Me and Chris used to mess around with. That used to sound great. So that was kind of. That was the whole Polythene guitar rig. It was basically Fender Twin going into Marshall 4x12, Vox 8030, and then I used to track a lot of the rhythm stuff with the same Marshall, which I track virtually every feeder song with now, which I swapped and paid some cash for off Chris Sheldon.
Wow.
It was his amp, and I've still got it in my studio, but I can see it from here. And that's been on pretty much every feeder song since we started. Well, since I've had it.
There's guitar people listening right now, rubbing their hands together, going, "Oh wow!"
And everyone else is falling asleep.
Yeah,
going,
like shut up, just talk about the albums. I don't care.
It's actually quite nice to talk about gear once in a while. But yeah, it was a pretty old school setup. I'm not really. I mean, I love vintage gear. I'm not at all a guitar geek type at all. I'm not great with programming stuff. I mean, like Tommy Gleason on guitar. I like guitar players. He's amazing at all that stuff. He literally will have the latest pedal, and it'll all be programmed, and it's like a spaceship. And I look at it and go, "Oh my god, I wish I had that," but I wouldn't really know where to start.
Too much to think about.
But he's and he's brilliant, and also he's doing a lot of those atmospheric sounds and all those little things that I do on the records that he can recreate using all those pedals. Whereas I would have about 50 different things all plugged in with wires hanging out, and I'm keeping it old school because. Of course, it's nice to have a really fancy sort of setup, but it's also, I don't want to lose that sound, that identity I have. And I have gone through various things. I do change it here and there. I'm not totally lazy, but I kind of like that sound. I feel as though it's a massive part of that feeder kind of dynamic.
And something that amazes me about Feeder is the kind of range of your audience. So I hate to admit it, but I'm 40 next month, which makes me feel really old.
Just a little baby. Well, I think how I feel.
I know, mate. It's scary. And, if I go to a Feeder show, some people will be like, "Oh, you're here to pick up your kid." I'm like, "No, fuck off." I was there back in the day. I got Swim on, vinyl. Fuck you. But then there's other people that are there that are sort of in their 20s that are discovered you, and then there'd be bands that have got on board when you kind of Buck Rogers days and Just a Day and all that, but then you're getting new fans from your new material, so it must be incredible to look out and see you've played Download, V Festival, the complete opposites of Festival. Your picnic hampers at V, and then Download rockers with their fucking black hair and screaming.
I know. I mean,
you appeal to both.
Fortunate.
You appeal to both perfectly.
Yeah, I mean, we're very fortunate. I've mentioned this before. We've got literally, I get parents sending me messages and kids saying, "Oh, my kid's only 12. Can he come to the game at 10, 11? I'm thinking, good, that's the age I was saying, like Ozzy Osbourne and stuff. I'm thinking, this is awesome. And a lot of people said you were the first band we ever saw. You always get asked that question.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, well, there's quite a few that might say Feeder actually, but it's I think I'm totally flattered by it. So I think we have, as you said at our gigs, it's such a mixture. There's some really quite young kids there. There's a lot of 20-year-olds there who are sort of, into 90s music, maybe, discovered Feeder, whether it was from Spotify or from their older, from their parents or older brothers, like I discovered music. I don't care, but it's great. And I have such respect, and I feel so honored that we've had so many like amazing diehard fans over the years, and there's a lot of them that still come to all the shows. But it's really great to have a sort of new army of feeder kind of followers coming as well. Just have that mixture of old school and new, and just keeps it really fresh for us. And we must be doing something right, because kids are hard to please. I know, I've got two.
The scary thing as well is it's the attention span as well. Like I found that, I sound like a granddad now, and I never thought I would, but I'm missing the days of queuing up outside Our Price or Virgin, getting an album, $12.99, going home and listen to it from start to finish. You wouldn't flick through the tracks. You take out the booklet, the smell of that freshly printed booklet, the lyrics, the photos, the studio pics, every word you've written. And now it's like, oh, if I push play on Spotify, if I don't like it, I just skip it and then go to the next one. And it feels so disposable. But I remember like doing my paper round for a whole week so I could go out there and afford to buy the new Bush album or Green Day. And, I feel like as great it is, you can get your music heard by anyone by the touch of a button. I miss I do sound like a granddad. I miss the old days of going out and physically working for that CD and then cherishing it and listening to it for weeks and learning every song. And it must be tough for you now because you sold all those vinyls back in the day, the tapes, the CDs. But now trying to get someone's attention span for more than 5 minutes is tough,
It is, but I'm afraid I'm trapped in a bit of a time warp, because I can't, just because of the kind of band we are, where we came from, and what I grew up listening to and buying records. Every feeder record, I can assure you, whether people like the record or whether it's our best album or our worst album, whatever, every one of those records, there's a lot of love gone into that record. And I don't just mean the music. I mean, I am literally, it's so important to me, the artwork, working with the right people, the right artists. I spent weeks, I mean months doing it sometimes, making sure that all the credits are right, making sure that the sequence takes me forever. I mean, I say tell him do this, and he's like, whatever, but I am just like, to me it's so important, and I know most people don't care, but I sequence an album like I want people to hear it and to be that journey. I don't sequence it to be like flick through. I know that's the world we live in, but there's some, the old romantic in me thinks there might be some fan that will buy that album, just put it on from start to finish and go, yeah, or I didn't like that, fine, but at least hear it in the way I wanted to hear it. And it may not be in the right sequence, but that's that's where we came to after weeks of changing it around. Honestly, you would think, if you saw me and how anal I am about it, you'd probably think I need some help.
No, it's good. I think it should be. I think some bands, they're not even if it's not a concept album, I think it should take you on a journey. And there's a reason why you might have insomnia right at the start of an album to get you, to kick you, to pull you straight in. But then later on, you've got the mellower tracks that then end with a massive fucking eruption of just rock again to take you through that. So I know that it's not anal, it's being proud of what you do and being creative genius. You're sitting there wanting it to.
I mean, album to me is like a show. It's like a film. It's like you put a big bit of your soul on in music for people to hear, and to me it's a very visual thing in my head when I hear music. I'm sure, don't you get that? Lyrics, and it's a bit like when you read a book, everyone has their own imagery of whatever that or the lines you're reading. And I when I hear music, I get that, and that's why I'm always a little bit nervous about over talking about the songs, but it's something which I have to do sometimes, or I'm open to do. But I want people just to get their own imagery and just have their own little journey with it. I just sequence it in the way I think this works. This is what I'm trying to say. Whether it has a bit of a concept, which some of them do, some of the songs are connected, even on different records. I'm really into that. And sometimes an album can be sequenced a bit like a live show. Some of the more rocky records I approach a bit like that. Like you said, opening something with a bit of a bang. Sometimes you want to open a bit more mellow. It really depends on what you're trying to do with the record and what kind of record it is. So and I think even if you come to a live gig, what I like about being a feeder and doing what we do is that we can have 3 or 4 like really heavy old school feeder songs, or even something quite recent that's heavy, and then we can sort of like drop in a really mellow song. And I think you need that break sometimes. People need kind of mentally, if you're just bombarded with 10 songs like Shade, it just beats the hell out of you. And I think songs sound more powerful when you have a bit of a break sometimes. And I think I kind of write like that as well, because I think I love a good riff, don't get me wrong. And I know some people love that side of Feeder, and I do, don't get me wrong. Playing the heavy stuff live is so much fun. I mean, like Tack, it's just, you just see it, he just lights up, but it's the dynamics, kind of around those heavy songs, I think, that make it a better show. And that's what I'm always trying to get right, and what we're always trying to do as a band, both on record and live. And it's quite hard to do, but it's great. It's what keeps it interesting. It's what keeps it fun. I still love writing songs and producing music and stuff like that. It's not a chore for me, and it's not like, it is a job because it's my career, but it's a dream. It's something I always wanted to do since I was very, very young, and I'm very fortunate that I'm still doing it, and I'm very lucky to still have all these songs that still seem to keep coming.
And what is it that you think, because we've talked about some bands today that are no longer with us, or that have just called it a day, but it's frightening, as we said it, in 92, I think you formed like the Reed band or whatever and stuff, but in 94 it's launched as Real, sorry. And in 94, you launched, so we're nearly at 30 years, but you still, the fact that you've got a new album coming out, Torpedo, it's your 11th album, and you still, from meeting you in Birmingham 20 years ago at Wolverhampton, and throughout your career, you still got the hunger now that you had 20 years ago and 10 years ago. And it's great, because so many bands are just, it's so transparent for a fan, but you see so many bands now where they do a reunion tour, they go on stage and they're doing a cash grab, and you're just looking going, they're not interested in this, but you're still doing it because you want to, and it's, it's in your blood.
Well, we put a lot into our shows. I'll be lying to you if we could just go totally old school, turn up, just use the lights in the venue, like a lot of bands of our era do, and people would love the show, I'm sure. I mean, so you can, at the end of the day, it's all about the music, but we do make an effort. We try and make it. We can't do a news show. We don't. We're not at that level, but we do. We put a lot into our shows. We work with some great people. I don't know if you've been to any of our recent shows, but we have a lot of visuals, and we've always got something.
Yeah.
Because we want, we don't make as much money by doing tours like that. But to me, I really couldn't care. I just want people to have a great experience, and also it's great for us to be part of a show that looks visually quite good. Obviously, you're a bit restricted on some venue sizes and stuff like that, but we still care about it. And I think it's, going to see a band live is about the music. That's the most important thing. But I think if you've got a good show around it, it just makes it a much better experience for everybody, and it just makes it a bit more fun for us as well. Sometimes it's great to go back and not have anything, just play in some little place where there's literally 2 lights.
Yeah.
Just put a few fairy lights around your mic stand, just get up there and do it. And sometimes I love those kind of gigs, but when we're doing a proper album tour and people are paying good money to come and see us, I really, we really do try and make an effort to make it like a really great night for people.
It's important. I mean, it's tough at the moment with the world and the way it's gone for people to come out and go to shows again, but it's amazing that people put so much thought and effort into the stage show, because it isn't just a gig. Then you've got like this production, you've got the visuals, and it makes it an experience. So when I'm leaving, I'm not just thinking, oh, I'm glad they played that song. I'm like, God, remember how those lights worked, and the way that everyone sang along, and then the different lighting was on the crowd at that point. And it's an experience then as a whole, that's why you're spending your money. And it's tough, isn't it, to get fans to part with money for a CD now or anything at the merch table, but to come to the actual concert and come out and be distracted from their home life or their phone or their PlayStation. It's an honor to then get them to come out and share an evening with you.
Yeah, it is. I mean, there's so many bands, obviously, because of the whole COVID situation, everyone's starting to play it. It's great. It's real. Let's all go for it, but everyone's fighting for a slot. So although it's starting to get really positive, it's actually made the competition and just availability for venues, and there's only so much money, or only so many bands some will go and see. So it's great, and I'm not complaining about it. I'm saying it's although we're coming out of a really dark place into a slightly better kind of world, it's going to take time to balance and to get back to some sort of kind of sort of normality, I think. But it's feeling positive, and I'm just looking forward to just getting out there and playing again, because it's not good not, if you're in a band, it's just not good to not do that. It's just such an important part, I mean, I'm sort of, we're lucky, and I'm very lucky that I write music, so that's kept me quite sane. And I'm writing as much stuff now as I did, if not more than I did in early Feeder days, that's for sure. And I know I've kind of learned a little bit along the way, but there's still a lot of stuff that I listened to Polythene for the first time, a little bit of it the other day, and I thought, although I hear stuff and think, oh God, there was a lot of stuff on that record that I'm still doing now, and I'm not trying to go back and trying to say, I'm not trying to copy that, but it's just natural sound that I still think sort of flows through most Feeder records. Some albums have been a bit more, a little bit less heavy, or maybe some people think they're more radio friendly, but they weren't necessarily written to be that. It was just what was happening at that time. Sometimes it could have been affected by some of the bands we were touring with. I mean, the great thing about what we've had over the years is that I think Taka posted, he found some old Reading footage of us, so that really important gig back in, was it 97 or something? We were a 3-piece. I remember it's a really important gig for us and a real turning point for us as a band. And I was, he put up, I think, Shade or something, and then he sent me a few that he'd found. I just listened to just a couple of old school Feeder songs like My Perfect Day, Shade, Descend, stuff like that. And I just felt a real connection. But when I listened to this album, this new album, Torpedo, I'm not saying there's some sort of classic early Feeder moments on this record, I think. And it was quite nice because I didn't really realize it at the time.
And you're sitting there saying that you're writing more now than the early Feeder days. I know that you've already sat there and written your next album, not Torpedo, the one to follow that, which is insane.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I've written a few more tracks. I mean, I've still working some lyrics now, but I've written 5 or 6 tracks, which I wasn't planning on doing, that I really want to try and finish now. So I just called Taka to say I might have some more tracks I'll be sending up. If you want to throw some bass on, just we all hanging around. In fact, I'm going to start doing some demoing on Friday, just in my little studio with my engineer Tim, and and to see what happens really. So I don't know if they come out well, we'll either see if they either add those to what was planned to be the next record. And maybe drop a few off that, because these tracks are quite rocky actually. There's one sort of in between, because there's one that's sort of quite classic Feeder, but the others are follow on more naturally from this like Torpedo album. So it might just sort of it might be nice just to add a few like that to the next one as well. But it's not out of the fact we don't have enough songs for the next album, because we've already got quite a few already, which is it's not mixed. The next album, there's 3 or 4 tracks that we need to finish off, but otherwise it's basically done. I mean, the story was the songs on the next album were written here before this album.
Wow,
it sounds bizarre, I know, but basically, I got back into writing during the whole lockdown thing and wrote pretty much this album, Torpedo, and it just felt like we wanted to come back. I don't know, it just felt like a more natural record to come back with. Although the next record is probably slightly more, I hate saying the word commercial because it's a curse. It's probably slightly more, I would say it's slightly more upbeat in places. I mean, there's still some rocky songs on there, but it's probably a bit more classic Feeder, a bit more the kind of, Yes They Went Too Soon kind of era, I suppose.
Wow.
I mean, it's hard to say really. I mean, because if I add some of these new ones, it might change the chemistry of it a bit.
But the fact that you've done this album Torpedo, which the fans can listen to in a couple of months, they can then go and see you hopefully in May. And then what are we looking? Do you think it could be as soon as only sort of 12, 18 months?
Well, the plan was we were going to do a double album because the plan was we thought, what should we do? So I thought, well, just keep writing. And then we were thinking about sort of revisiting the whole Swim thing and then doing maybe 3 mini albums. And then when I played some of the new stuff to people, they were like, this is really good. We should just do this as a proper album. And I was like, oh, we've got quite a lot of songs. Well, what should we do with the others? And then I suddenly thought, let's do a double album. Let's do the full, let's do the full kind of like prog thing.
Melancholy and the Infinite Sadness by
exactly.
Feeder.
yeah, I've always wanted to do it, and I think it would have been strong enough, but I just felt like, with the way, just talking about the way albums come and go so quickly, I thought, is it too much information on one record? Is it
You're
better
asking
just
too much
to...
of people's attention. People aren't prepared now. They're like, no, fuck that. I don't want it. Give them 2
I know,
albums, they'll do it. But
no. So basically, what I decided to do is it is a kind of a double album. It's going to be 2 albums, but they're connected. So if you imagine it's a double album, but you have to wait for the second half. But they're still standalone albums in their own right. So they're going to be different artwork and all that. But we are going to use the same artist. That's the plan. We've already got the image shift for the next album already done. So I want it to have a kind of like a theme. So sort of visually,
lovely.
Yeah, it's just be nice to have the 2 together as well. They're very much going to be standalone, but to me they're still connected.
That's beautiful.
So it's kind of, so should you get the 2, then you got a double album.
That's good. And how do you feel about going out there and playing again? And I know it sounds weird, but you've gone from a band that have done small venues to headlining Download to having a couple of years off. And I know it's not off because you've been writing and recording and demoing and you've never been busier, but it must be incredible to feel that we're only, touch wood, a couple of months away from you going back out there, playing shows again, connecting with people, but also playing songs that no one's heard yet. And that, you can start to test the water with the audience with these brand new tracks.
Yeah, well, we did a couple of festivals this year, so we were quite lucky to get those in. That was a real savior for us, because it was just, I was just getting worried about not playing for that long. It's just not good for you, and you sort of get out of the whole kind of headspace. It's sort of like physically as well. It's not good not to be singing, live, because there was, because you build up, you build up a way of doing stuff. It's a bit like if you don't play football or don't go for a run.
Yeah, you get rusty.
So you go for go for a run after 6 months and you can barely walk the next day. It's like that, it's like that with live performing, especially when you're singing or playing drums. I mean, like the drumming on theatre stuff is pretty full on. So for like Jeff, he's got to keep himself like pretty fit to play that stuff. It's all right in the studio, but when you get out live, you think an hour and a half theatre set, it's a workout for the drummer, I'm telling you.
Yeah, especially 3 or 4 days a week as well.
Yeah. But I am really looking forward to it. I always get a bit nervous before tours because I want it to be great. It's always nice to play new music, and I know there's a lot of people that just want to go and see a band they like and just hear the same greatest hits thing, and I get that. But we've been doing that a lot. We've done a lot of festivals where we do pretty much the greatest hits, and I'm not dissing any of that music or
no.
I appreciate people have bought that region, but this isn't a new album tour, so. If we go out and do the greatest hits tour, then it doesn't leave us time to play any new songs. So the plan is to play, I've said this a few times, is to do, obviously, like a big chunk of this record.
Yeah.
If we can get it together in rehearsal. And then, revisit some old theatre classics as well, maybe play things like Shade again and songs like that we haven't done for a long, long time. Throw a few of those old classics in that some of the diehard fans, would probably, love to hear again. And maybe just do a couple of big hitters at the end. I think that's a great way of doing it, because you leave people with a few songs that they really know, but it gives us a chance and gives real fans a chance to hear something new as well. And I think the stuff is going to sound good live. So, and I think the album would have been out for long enough that people will get to know the songs a bit. And that helps. If you go on tour, the album's literally just come out, you're playing all new stuff. It can be quite tricky sometimes. You can feel that sort of pin drop between songs.
Well, definitely. In the crowd, you go and watch a band, then you go and want to see them play all the big hits, and then this is a brand new song, and the album's not out yet. And literally, everyone's like, "Oh, I'll go to the bar now," or it just goes dead.
I mean, I always remember when we drop a song at a festival sometimes. And in fact, we've done it quite a few times over the years. I mean, I remember playing Burton Rogers for the first time at the festival, and you have this thing like, "Oh my god, this is really risky," but when you drop a new song at a festival and it connects like straight away, you think, oh yeah, this one's definitely got something. And sometimes it might not be necessarily a commercial song. I mean, on some of the festivals we did, some were quite mainstream audiences actually. They weren't all out rock kind of lineup festivals. And it's bizarre because we seem to work on these bills that don't really have many other heavy bands on, but for some reason we just kind of rock up and it just seems to work, which is great. But yeah, we were playing songs, like Kyoto from the last record. I don't know if you've heard that song on the Tallulah album. It's a pretty heavy track, and it's pretty old school theatre. And we love playing it live. And it, went down an absolute storm, and it didn't go down any worse than some of the big singles. But so sometimes I think you have to be give people credit sometimes, because when you think a song is going to absolutely bomb, it can really connect. Sometimes you never quite know.
Is that kind of how you went
is,
in the mindset of obviously headlining Download, which is insane, isn't it? What a thing to look back on. The fact you went on with that mentality of trying to win the crowd over by doing your heaviest set ever,
didn't really
and
work.
We mentioned Biffy Clyro a few times today, but they, I went to see them and people walked away just because it was Biffy Clyro. Oh, they're not fucking Kiss, they're not Iron Maiden, fuck them. That's what everyone's mentality was. And then they played stuff like Machines and Many of Honor, which is like, Radio 1, the most perfect radio-friendly songs. But your set at Download, it was when you started playing the more radio-friendly, stripped-down acoustic stuff like High and, even the Buck Rogers and Just Today, which is more radio-friendly and more poppy.
Yeah.
The crowd really got into it, and they didn't give a shit.
Yeah,
for the
I know.
heavier stuff.
It was really weird. I think it's because there was a lot of people there that didn't, that knew the band, that didn't necessarily know the earlier stuff. And, I was sort of, so-called like metalers. I mean, most sort of heavy metal stuff and most of those metal bands have got some good songs. They're quite structured songs. A lot of metal stuff is quite song-based. You actually listen to it. And it's like, every metal band's got a ballad, haven't they?
Of course,
Metallica, and I just think that, we just sort of maybe misread it. I think we were trying to sort of do too much old school stuff in the first half, trying to show that we can really rock out. Well, we didn't really need to. We just turn up, just to do what we do. Yeah, I mean, I think if we mixed the setup a bit more new and older stuff, I think that probably would have worked better. But I just misread it. But you know what? It was a great gig in the end. We did win it over. It wasn't like a complete howler, but it was an experimental year. They were trying to make it a bit more, a bit more alternative rock, not seen as such a kind of metal festival, sort of lose the kind of Monsters of Rock sort of label. So it was a bit of an experiment. That's why they booked bands like us and Biffy and Garbage were on before us and stuff like that. But I think we stood our ground. I think we definitely won them over. We were probably our most successful at that point, because Comfort and Sound had done really well. We were like on tour with bands like U2 and all sorts. I mean, it was a good time for us. And I think we would do it. I can't remember. It might even be the same weekend. I'm sure we went from Download to supporting U2 or something. It was bizarre, but
unbelievable though, isn't it? What a legendary moment.
It was great to do that, because I remember going to Monsters of Rock when I was younger, and to be headlining what was the equivalent of that was just thinking, my God, I never would have dreamed that, and going to the press conference and meeting Ozzy and Sharon, it's just bizarre.
Amazing though, how good. And imagine now going back to your teacher and saying, you remember when you took me when I was 12 to see Sabbath? Well, here he is.
He knows, actually. Sadly, I think the teacher died. He wasn't very old, but I know that he apparently was quite, I was told he was quite proud of what I'd done, and he knew I'd mentioned him in a few interviews. Like, this going back years. I think he was quite touched by that. But sadly he's not with us. But you know what? He was that was just introducing me to seeing like a proper band, and lots of rock bands was really influential, I think, on me anyway as a writer. And
something that I ask everyone that comes on the podcast, and it doesn't matter if they're a musician, a film director, a writer, but what advice do you give to people that are listening today? Not just the people that are absolutely obsessed with guitars now, that are loving the fact you've mentioned pedals and amps, but people that want to make a name for themselves and get out there, because the industry, you've seen it from cassettes to vinyls to CDs, people queuing up. How hard is it now, I think, to try and get heard? Yes, it's easy to get on Spotify, but it must be really difficult for a band to stand out, because it's so busy now, the world of bands. It's like podcasts, it's everyone's got a podcast, everyone's got a band. What advice do you give to people listening that want to try and make it in this industry?
You know what? It's very difficult. My daughter sings a bit, and she may get into a band. I'm not pushing. I don't want to be the kind of dad in the band pushing my kids to do music. And they're both into music. She's got a really good voice. I'm not just saying that. She's got a really nice voice, and she plays guitar. And she's written a couple of songs. But anyway, but I would look. It's always been a tough industry, and I'd be lying to you if I said it wasn't. It was really hard for us to get signed, but we did it, and we chipped away. against some people that thought we were too heavy or you're too grungy, you're not cool enemy, whatever. We were like, well, fuck you,
Yeah.
this is what we do. We've got some tunes. We think this music with a bit of time could fill, big spaces, and that was always our dream, and we stuck to it. And I would say that's the advice I would give. It is a hard business, and I'd be lying to you if I said that it's going to be easy. And it's probably even easier to be in a band than it used to be back then, because anyone can make music now. It's so much easier to make records in your back garden, in your bedroom, which is a great thing. But I think everyone thinks they can be in a band now, so you've got even more competition, I suppose. It's financially, it's a very difficult. It's a very different time to what it used to be, because people used to buy a lot of CDs, and that's what helped bands to earn a living. So it's really about, at the moment, it's more about playing live and stuff like that. So I would say just go for it. But it's really all about having a good song, or having good songs. To me, that's the key, and being consistent and believing in yourself. That's what I've always done. That's what we've always done. And we have had a lot of critics along the way, but we were a bit like, well, we believe in this. And I'm still here now talking to you almost 30 years later, still making records. And, so that's the advice I would give. But it is a tough industry, but it doesn't mean to say that you can be the next Biffy Clyro or the next Foo Fighters or the next Speed or whatever, and anything is possible. Hopefully I'm proof of that,
Are we going to sit here in 30 years time and do a follow-up podcast where you're going for your Tom Petty era and just doing your final bits?
I'll be seriously ill. But you know what? I don't know if you've ever, I think because of my style of writing, I think I can grow sort of gracefully into that.
That's
so
the
I think
word,
I'm still going to be very guitar driven. My solo stuff is very much touches on much more the kind of how I start, how I write songs, a bit more stripped back. It's still very, you hear a lot of feeder elements in there, but it's pretty feeder without the beat. There's no fuzz boxes and stuff like that. It's very much about keeping it a bit more, just a bit more laid back, a bit more organic. And that's something which, we may grow into that a bit more. I've always, my dream is to take feeder to sort of merge into being a rock band, but go a bit more towards that kind of Tom Petty sort of area. Because I think we have songs already that do that. It's just, if you pull a few of those big muffs off the multi-tracks, you'd be amazed. They still work in that simplistic way as well, because that's how I write them.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? If you're sitting there with your acoustic and that's how it all starts, and then it builds upon that. If the foundation was that, it's easy to go back that direction.
Tom Petty, I don't know if you watched the Wallflowers thing, the film.
Tom Petty's one of my favorite artists of all time.
He was like, there's the guy, like it's a legendary Tom Petty, having to sort of keep the record company happy to do the 2 singles for his best of. And I'm thinking, this is crazy. Tom Petty could just do what he wants with me. But, so everyone has to play the game to a certain extent. And, Wallflowers, I suppose, was his, although he was still working with a lot of the same people. And that was the most bizarre thing about it. It was kind of a solo record, but I think he really enjoyed making that record. And I totally could see that. I felt a real connection watching that, documentary thing. And it was so well done.
There is only one Tom Petty, isn't there? He's an absolute god, and his solo stuff, the stuff with the Heartbreakers, everything is.
I'm so gutted he's not around, because it's just a very unfortunate thing that happened, because he definitely had a lot more songs in him, and the kind of style he wrote in, he could do when he was older, and he could pull it off. And I went to see him at Hyde Park, and I managed to blag a pass that got me on the side of the stage. So I literally watched off the set, sat next to, I think it was, well, I wasn't set, I was actually stood with our live drummer Jeff Holroyd, and we were watching, thinking, this is the most surreal thing ever. I think his daughters were stood on the side of the stage thinking, who are these 2 guys?
Yeah, they meant to be here.
Are they meant to be? Literally, I walked into his dressing room.
Wow.
Thinking, and I didn't realize he'd be in there. And he's just it was a big dressing room, and we walked in, we thought, this is a bit awkward. They didn't even blink an eye. They were over in the corner. They had like a piano. They were all kind of stood around the piano, just kind of warming up. And
oh my god!
Honestly, and there was booze on the thing. I mean, Jeff was saying, "Should we just help ourselves?
Grab a beer and pretend you're meant to be there."
Hi, Tom.
Yeah.
They didn't even blink an eye. They probably thought it from somebody from the record company or somebody, just sort of, had
That's
a pass,
amazing.
whatever. it was the most amazing thing. But the one thing that I regret is I wish I got up to him and said, "Look, I got this pass. I just want to say hi and just shake your hand,"
That's
but I
it.
didn't.
Yeah. I would have fanboyed out. I would have been like Wayne's World, like, we're not worthy. I would have just been too much. I don't know how I'd have
think I
composed
would have.
myself. Yeah.
I think I would have been as well. Actually, I think me and Jeffrey were thinking this is bizarre because
Try and be cool. Try and be cool. Yeah.
There's not many people that I would sort of get, feel that way, but he's definitely up there for me, and just on the songwriting, I just like really connect with him, and I feel, I don't know, I sort of understand just that style of writing that he did, and very sad, but you know what, we still got his music, which is great, and it's timeless, his stuff, even though it's kind of, it wasn't sort of now young thing. It's so influential, that music. You can hear, when I hear bands like the Eels and stuff like that, who I love, I can hear Tom Petty and the Eels music.
It's amazing as well. Like even like last year, the Spotify Wrapped Up. It tells you your most listened to music for the year and all this. It kind of does a summary. Even now, my most listened to artist is Tom Petty, and it was my parents 20 years ago, and it's. In 20 years' time, I'll still be listening to it all just as much. It's incredible. It's timeless.
It is. It is. If I'd sort of, somebody asked me once, I said, if you got a pot and you mixed up Tom Petty and Black Sabbath and Fleetwood Mac, then that's kind of, that would bring out little elements of what kind of like Feeder sound like in some way. Because
I have that tattooed on my chest. That would be like my ultimate compliment. Like Sabbath, Fleetwood Mac, and Tom Petty is me.
I mean, they're just all iconic bands, and they all do a different thing, but they're all, hugely influential to me. I would say those three particularly. Anyway, but songwriting. It's all about songwriting. That's what he was great at. So, So any advice out there, unless you're very lucky and very hipster and you have your moment, just keep writing the songs, and if you get that one that comes along and it connects with people, then that can be your launch pad.
I think this leads really nicely to my final question today. And what I do on Mark and Me to try and make it as original as I can is the guest that's on the podcast gets to choose the outro piece of music, and it can be any band, any artist, any song in the world. I find bands find this the hardest question. You'll probably get it down to 10 songs and want to drop me a Facebook message in a couple of days, but I'm not allowing it. It's got to be on the spot. So
what's one song?
One song. So our episode is done. It's all edited and I'm ready to put it out to the world. What song do you want to choose that's such an important song to you, that means the most to you, that when I ask the question comes to your heart, soul, and you're like, this is the song I want?
Oh my goodness, that is very, 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 very tricky. Well, as we talked about Tom Petty,
I was going to say, if it's not Tom Petty, my mind will be blown.
I'm going to have to go with Tom. I mean, look, there's so many that I could mention, but the only question is, which Tom Petty song? I mean, I still love "Don't Come Around Here" and "Don't Come Around Here No More." It's just a classic, but "Last Dance of Mary Jane," I don't know. Very, very, very tricky. There's so many that I love. Which one do I pick? This is what I like doing. This is a cruel. I think I'm going to go with "Last Dance of Mary Jane." I think that's the official title of it. Only because that was the song that on that film. I didn't realize that he literally just wrote that for a couple of tracks. Two new songs for the best album. I'm thinking, how good is that song?
I know.
I'm just going to go to a different studio, put my head in a different space, go back into that vibe, and write the most. It's a really clever song. Then someone just saw all the little backing vocal parts and all the little bits. It's a great track. So I'm going to go with that, just out of respect to Tom Petty, as a tribute to one of my heroes. Don't have that many musical heroes, but he's definitely up there.
Him and Jeff Buckley are mine. Jeff Buckley and Tom Petty, that's it. That's the one.
Jeff Buckley's awesome. That's my friend once recorded backing vocals with Jeff Buckley in New York like many years ago.
Wow.
So he said he was a lovely guy, really, really down to earth, super mellow, liked to drink, just proper rock and roller, but really sweet. That's what he said, and he said
I never got to see him live, and my friend went to see him at Wolverhampton, and afterwards he invited everyone back to the hotel and played songs he couldn't fit on the set list for everyone acoustically in the reception of the bar, and I was like, my God, I'd give anything for that.
I know. I had a chance to go and see him, and I didn't go for some reason, and I really, really deeply regret it. But anyway, he was a real talent. Yeah, amazing voice, incredible. Great.
Well, I love
listen,
today's
fun.
episode as being feeder and tribute to Tom Petty. I love it. It's it couldn't ask for much better than that.
Exactly.
I wish you all the luck with the brand new album Torpedo. I am really excited to see the fans' reactions, and if everything goes well and the world doesn't go crazy, I will be there in Birmingham in May, and I can't wait to see these songs live.
Thanks, Mark. Great. Listen, give me a shout before, and I'll try and sort you out a backstage pass.
That'd be amazing. I would really appreciate it. I'll send you a message. Thank you, dude. I appreciate it. It's been a long time coming, but it's been worth it. So thanks so much. And then I'll catch up with you soon. Take care,
Cheers,
man.
Mark. Take care,
Bye-bye.
mate. See you, mate. Bye.
So there it is. There's my interview with me and the lovely Grant Nicholas. Feeder really have been one of the most influential bands that I've listened to over the last 20, maybe 25 years. I think they're astonishing, and if you ever get the chance to go and see them live, do. They put on one of the best shows out there, and I truly do mean it. Grant Nicholas is one of the nicest people in the music industry. He was so generous with his time, and I've really enjoyed today's interview, so a massive thanks again to Grant for coming on the show. As we discussed on today's interview, Feeder do have a brand new album coming out, Torpedo. It's available on March the 22nd, and you should all go and check it out. And they are going to be playing some UK shows around that, so if you get the chance, please go and see them. You will not be disappointed. If you've enjoyed today's episode, please jump on markandme.com. On there, there's links to my Facebook, Twitter and Instagram, and I ask you all to please share this on your social media networks. It gives me a huge boost in numbers, it gets the name out there and really does help boost this podcast. It costs absolutely nothing to do. It's a retweet button or a share on Facebook or share it on your Instagram feed, but it really, really helps the podcast and it's all I ask. The podcast is free, it will always remain free, and it's the only thing I ask from you guys back at home. But at the same time, if you've really enjoyed today's episode, I do have a Patreon page. Each and every month, thanks to the sponsors of the podcast, the amazing Richer Sounds, Vice Press and Last Exit to Nowhere t-shirts, I have some incredible prizes to give away to say thanks for supporting me. To find the link to my Patreon, it's on markandme.com. For as little as £1 per month, you're going to get guaranteed a minimum of 6 podcasts. You're going to start getting some bonus episodes. So if you want to support me via Patreon, the link is on markandme.com and it really is appreciated. I want to say again a massive thank you for Grant for coming on the show. I hope you've all enjoyed this amazing episode. It's been a huge one for me and I'm not slowing down anytime soon. So I will be back with a brand new episode in just a few days' time. So until then, look after yourself, take care, listen to Feeder, and I'll see you all soon.
She grew up in an Indiana town, had a good-looking mama who never was around, but she grew up tall and she grew up right with them Indiana boys on an Indiana night. Well, she moved down here at the age of 18. She blew the boys away, it was more than they'd seen. I was introduced and we both started grooving. She said, I dig you, baby, but I got to keep moving on. Keep moving on. Last dance with Mary Jane, one more time to kill the pain. I You never slow down, you never grow old. I'm tired of screwing up, tired of going down, tired of myself, tired of this town. Oh my, oh hell yes. Honey, put on that party dress. Buy me a drink, sing me a song. Take me as I come, cause I can't stay long. Last dance with Mary Jane. One more time to kill the pain. I feel summer creeping in. I'm tired of this town again. Market Square, she's standing in her underwear, looking down from a hotel room. The nightfall will be coming soon. Oh my, oh hell yes. You got to put on that party dress. It was too cold to cry when I woke up alone. I hit my last number, I walked to the road. Last dance with Mary Jane. One more time to kill the pain.